I'm a big planner. And I think you the power of planning, if that's your schedule or if that's things that you want to tackle or even products that you want to release, like thinking through your sprint cycle. Like we would have Scrum meetings every day. Okay, what's important to deliver? What's not important? We would kind of do red, green, yellow. And so I think if you take some of that philosophy of how product and engineering teams work and you apply that into your daily life, it's actually really beneficial. What do I need to get done? What do I need to stop doing? And what do I need to start doing? And make that realistic, but you can almost do that daily or weekly or monthly, however you want to get that done. And I think especially as a new founder or wanting to come up with an idea, you have to have those milestones of like, I'm going to create the website. I'm going to do the marketing messaging. I'm going to start testing users. Like you have to have those, or in a lot of cases, it just won't happen.
On this week's episode of Establishing Your Empire, Cara McCarty. Cara is the co-founder and CPO of a startup called CodePilot, which was just acquired by AngelList. Cara has a wide range of experiences in the human capital area of business and really loves the people side of companies. On this episode, we dive into how CodePilot went from idea to launch to successful exit in a mere 24 months, and how Cara will continue to build her empire. You're listening to the Establishing Your Empire show, a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs, creatives, and future business owners to pursue their passions, grow their organizations, and build their empire. My name is Daran Herrman, and creatively, I'm best known for my photography. But business-wise, my claim to fame is growing a company from $15K per month in online sales to breaking the $1 million a month barrier. And I'm sitting down with interesting people to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how they have established their empires. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, appreciate you coming by. So today, why don't you start it off by giving us a little background information of who Cara is?
Yeah, happy to. So I started my career in Chicago working for a travel publisher called Travel Zoo. They're one of the largest online digital publications of travel deals. Spent a few years there in human resources as an HR generalist and an operator. And Retail Me Not here in Austin knocked on my door and said, we love what you're doing in the coupon space. Why don't you come down to Austin? I had never been. Fell in love with the city, fell in love with the tech scene, and thought, pre-IPO unicorn, I had to come down for Retail Me Not. So we did that. We IPO'd. And then since then, a few other career journeys in startup world and also major corporate and fintech, but all in a human capital capacity over the last 10 years. So really love the people side of the business and kind of a commercially minded people side of the business is my sweet spot.
So, and now you're co-founder and CPO of CodePilot. So before you tell me about CodePilot, what does CPO mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've been in people operations most of my entire career, but in a small startup, you really don't need a traditional people officer in the sense of that word. So I chose CPO really because it's a dual function role for me. It's people and product. And so really it's focusing on the intersection of how can we create a product for the human resources space. So it kind of creates both a challenge and also something I've been doing for the last 10 years.
That's super fun. Yeah. And also, why not? Like you get to give whatever, if you're a co-founder, you kind of can give yourself just about any title.
Honestly, I could be an executive assistant and I'd still be happy with that. It's really more about what you're doing than the title in any startup.
I agree. So give us a little bit of background of CodePilot and what you guys do.
Yeah. So CodePilot is an online platform for software engineers to find additional training and development and also to get jobs. So we created this platform in hoping that we could remove some of those biases that you face within an interview process and a training process, help software engineers get jobs, but also help companies better validate their talent. And we do that through a bunch of proprietary assessments that we've created, both technical adaptability and behavioral adaptability assessments.
So when you say assessment and training, so what's that actually mean? So let's act like I'm not a software engineer because I'm not.
Yeah.
And I wanted to use CodePilot. Would that be something that the company I'm applying to or that I'm already hired with has, or like how's it all work?
Yeah, think of it almost like a LinkedIn. It's kind of an ecosystem and a marketplace where you as an individual can come in and create a portfolio or profile, take trainings, add information about yourself. So really, as an individual user, you're creating a lot of learning and development for them personally, if they want to get a job or not. So you're creating this tool and this platform that they want to come back because they love to learn, and the accessibility and the ease of use to learn. Getting a job, I think, is really more of a secondary additional benefit that the platform provides. But really, it's for your own development.
And so how long has CodePilot been around? You guys are rather new, correct?
Yeah, about 24 months. So we started this journey in the beginning of 2018, and we're in the beginning of 2020 now. So pretty short in time. We, as kind of a founding team, have known each other longer. So Dave, the CEO, this was his vision, his idea. We had been working together since my days back at Retail Me Not. So I want to say that was in 2013 even. And so it's interesting to be able to do something that you love with people that you know. There's nothing better. And when he came to me and said, "Hey, Cara, I have this idea to automate something in the recruiting space and the training development space. Would you help me do it?" I think in a matter of 5 minutes, I said yes. Like,
so how did you actually start though? So he has this idea. Are you still employed at that time with Retail Me Not? Like how, and then like walk us through how that happened.
Yeah. So when Dave and I met back during Retail Me Not, we IPO'd and we had acquired a company that he had founded called Zen Deals. So he was already a serial founder and entrepreneur at that time on the technical side of the house, right? So he's, principal software engineer for the last, 20 years. And we instantly hit it off. And so for the last 5 years, we had stayed in touch with each other, coffee dates, all those kinds of things. When you find people that just you gravitate towards and you're just like, you inspire me, or there's something here that I love constantly being challenged by our conversations. So we stayed in touch. And then I had, decided to go work at World First, which was a fintech company. They were a PE-backed firm out of London, and we're about to go through some major transitions. And I was running their human resources for the Americas division. And that's when Dave approached me and said, "Hey, I'm getting some founders here in Austin coming to me individually and asking for help recruiting and training development. They're training their software engineering teams." And he said, I think there's a thing here. I think we can do this. So I did have a full-time job. I was working at the time when I started to, have more meetings with him and said, "Okay, I love the idea. Like, let's walk through this. What's the business model? How do you envision it? What's the product going to look like? Like, how do you really think that this business is going to grow?" And through that is when I met Caleb, our other co-founder. Caleb and Dave knew each other, and picking Caleb's brain on the commercial side of the business, and the finance and the ops side, like how would we make money? What's that going to look like? All of those types of questions that you go through, and together we really gelled. At the time, there was a fourth co-founder, which is an interesting story. So there was someone named Scott, who Dave also knew from a previous life working at Microsoft. And so it really was the four of us together, and we each brought a unique skill set. Dave, obviously the technical side, Scott, the marketing side, Caleb, the finance and commercial side, and then my side of the house, which was really the behavioral science side, the human resources side, the product side. How are we going to get this into the hands of recruiters and human resources people? So it was the four of us that really kind of came together and started to build this. And once we all decided to, it was we just took off like a hockey stick. We just couldn't get enough. We were working all day. It was really fun and exciting, and turning out lots of cool new ideas and whiteboarding walls and in a tiny little room, and everything that you envision as stereotypical startup. We checked the boxes.
Yeah. So you watched a movie and you said, "Okay, we got to be doing all those things.
We have to seem chaotic. There has to be crap everywhere. We have to get the t-shirts with our logo on it." So you guys got together, the powers united, right? Yeah.
Now that you're 24 months in, any advice on somebody starting that you would probably, maybe some stuff you wish you would have done, or things that did work early on?
Yeah. I've always been told, and I've heard from other really well-known entrepreneurs, everybody has $1 million idea, but it's the execution part. Are you really going to do it? Are you going to take that leap of faith? Are you going to take the risk? And I say when you're first starting out and you're thinking about doing something, I always say, vet your idea, start to put it out into the universe, communicate it to people, get feedback, see what their reactions are. And then if you can, find a team or a partner or a co-founder that really validates your idea, brings a unique skill set that you don't have, so that when you're going through a lot of the challenging times of, does this make sense? Am I building this right? Am I thinking about this correctly? You have someone or people to kind of bounce that idea off of. And I think, 3 to 4 minds are better than one mind. So I'd say when you're first starting out, think about, what's the product market fit? Think about the team that you're building. Think about what problem you're trying to solve. That's another really big one is, in the world of recruiting, you could be solving 100 different problems. Are you solving a problem for the hiring manager, for the recruiter, the individual candidate? Like, what exactly are you trying to do? What are you trying to automate? And in our opinion, we really wanted to focus on the end user, the software engineer, the person getting the job. That for us was always our number one focus, because we thought, well, if we get the platform and the product right for the end user and the consumer, then the companies will come, because we'll have this database of really awesome, incredible talent, and creating a frictionless process for them.
So, all right. So you started, you're 2 years in. Was there any pivots that happened? We always hear about, startups, and then a pivot has to happen or changes. Any of those stories for you guys?
All the time, if not weekly, monthly. But I'm serious. When you're running very, very quickly and you're trying to hit certain milestones and deadlines, and you're trying to scale a company, you're having to make decisions that could seem like a pivot or a 180 almost weekly. And if that means, hey, our business model was focused on this, and then all of a sudden we need to pivot to focus on this, that is just a natural part of the journey. I would say you have to be understanding of that, and also have an appetite for that, or that will crush your spirit, literally. And so you have to be someone that's willing to change and adapt. I'd say the biggest pivots that we made for the first, 12 months of the business, we were really focused on the consumer and the software engineer. And then we pivoted the second year, really focusing on the supply side. So if you think about a marketplace, you have the demand and the supply. And so we wanted to focus on partnerships, getting the companies on board, really making it valuable for software engineers that companies were using the platform, right? Because if you didn't, then why are they creating these profiles and taking these assessments and doing these trainings? So we did pivot, and that is a big shift in thinking of, we're going to spend all the first year just focused on the users of the software engineers. And the next year, we're just going to focus on companies and partnerships. Now, the great thing about that was we were able to land partnerships with Google, Amazon, and become a Microsoft AI Inner Circle partner, which there's not even 50 companies in the US that have that kind of accreditation. So that was really exciting. We got some really big wins in the second year, but it was a very big shift in focus. Another huge focus that we did on the product side was we went from a portfolio kind of profile tool into this training and development tool. So what we really found throughout the first year was that recruiting is a highly saturated market. There are a lot of recruiting tools. And so we really wanted to differentiate. And we found that kind of Udacity model of training and development, and then a job as a secondary way of revenue, really was a better deal. And I think training and development is still a place where there's not a lot of automation, and there's not a lot of innovation yet. Whereas recruiting, you have a lot of innovation that's already been happening in the last 10 years. And so that was another big pivot where we decided, from a marketing and a messaging and also a product perspective, we wanted to pivot our kind of core focus just from recruiting into training and development.
So when you say training and development, software developers already usually pretty advanced employees. So that sounds like a very difficult task to tackle.
Yeah.
So maybe you just walk me through a little bit more detail of how, let's say I'm a software developer and I'm making decent money, gotten my third job. How would that help me? Am I going to learn a new language, or how would that go?
Yeah, exactly. I think you can use it for a multitude of different reasons, but absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. You could use our tool to learn emerging technologies, new technologies. So one of them, machine learning. You could learn how to use Docker. There's a lot of technologies. If you're going to be working in a cloud-based kind of environment or team, or even infrastructure, that will train you and teach you on. So it is definitely more of the newer technologies. We also have some core technologies that are really good foundational core, like Python, or using Java or JavaScript, or even React. So what's really interesting about the assessments we created, though, is we really thought that creating full stack assessments were what's going to change the game. So when you think about a full stack assessment, or if you think about software engineering in kind of three parts, you have like the back end, the infrastructure that connects the back and the front, and then you have the front end. And all three of those pieces are usually, a software engineer is really good at one. But we found that in small startups or even small companies, you really have to be able to migrate and learn how all of them work together and connect together. So we really felt that creating full stack assessments was the way of the future, and then also creating the behavioral adaptability assessments as well. So we wanted to create assessments and these trainings that weren't ever done before. So we are the first cloud-based platform where you can really do over 250 different languages and 100 different platforms. And so because we're cloud-based, you can kind of plug and play what you want to learn and what you want to train on. And companies, I think it really resonated with them because they didn't have to get this out-of-the-box training where you're like, that doesn't really work exactly with what my team's working on. And so you could really customize our trainings.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense because then you also have a broader scope of customers that you can go pitch.
Yeah.
So how do you acquire customers? How do you get a client?
Yeah, I think in the startup world, I think the first year was our networks. And so what was really great is that Austin is such a large tech ecosystem, but also small in the sense that it's very well connected. And so I'm a mentor at the Founders Institute. Dave is a mentor and a CTO in residence at Techstars. And so we were very, very plugged in already with lots of companies that needed to hire their first few engineers right out of the door. And when I mean a lot, I mean, 10 new startups were coming out of the program every quarter potentially. So there were dozens of people that weren't quite sure how to hire their first technical talent or to even know what a validated software engineer did or how to even measure that. So that was the first way kind of our entry into the market was helping clients and helping customers and helping founders that we already knew and had relationships with. I think the second thing is then when we started to go upstream, right? So you go from very small startup founder to kind of more, I'd say like Series A, Series B, and then you have maybe more mid-size that are already very established companies. So I think that was the trajectory of what we focused on. And then by the year 2, we were working with clients like Aceable. You have several hundred employees. How could we better fit trainings for user groups of like a team of 2 all the way to a team of 50? And so I think a lot of it was word of mouth. We did a little bit of marketing, but a lot of it was organic growth and word of mouth.
Yeah, it sounds like the snowball effect.
Mm-hmm.
You get a few and then that snowball gets bigger. You could have some case studies. You could do, hey, look at my client list, all that stuff. So you mentioned marketing there. What is your guys' approach to marketing besides the word of mouth? Is there a budget there? Is it just who you know and set meetings, or what do you guys do?
Yeah, I think it depends on money, right? So most startups fail because they run out of capital. And so for us, it was really important for us to be intentional on where we spent capital. So we raised a small seed round, just under $200,000, and we wanted to make sure we deployed that in a smart way. And so we had set aside a little bit of budget for marketing. It was very intentional marketing. So we had a small booth at South by Southwest, but we were able to touch, 1,000 people in 2 days. And we made sure that everything that we did, we measured it. It was a measurable marketing expense. But in general, I think the cost to acquire our customers were, less than $2 an individual user, which is pretty low. But our budget was also low as well. So we tested campaigns. We tested doing Instagram campaigns, visual medium versus, text. We did some white papers. We did a lot of partnerships. So we worked with the Microsoft, a Microsoft Leap program, which is an interesting program that they do for people who want to become software engineers out of non-traditional backgrounds. And so we did a lot of things like that to kind of drum up marketing and also awareness, I think, because the biggest thing when you're a startup is nobody knows who you are. You could have a really cool brand and a really cool name, which we did, CodePilot, but that awareness piece of the funnel of marketing is the biggest one. And then from there, working your way down from awareness to acquisition to a repeat user.
Right. How did you guys come up with the name CodePilot?
That's a great question. I think Dave had an idea in his mind of CodePilot, and we had an original logo. Was like a guy with a helmet. It was this play on words of kind of like military and technology and like this kind of badass figure of like, you can do anything that you set your mind to, this kind of mantra. And then we actually hired a brand consultant. So a little bit of our marketing budget did go to a brand consultant who is a very well-known brand consultant that did some here in Austin, like Yeti and Outdoor Voices. And so we really felt like that was going to be really important for us. He's fantastic. He actually redesigned our logo, our website, our colors, everything that you kind of needed to be a powerhouse brand. And that's when we came out with like the wings, and CodePilot. And it's funny, even to this day, we still get people when we wear our gear around that's like, oh my God, that's so awesome. How can I get that? And they don't even know what we do and they don't even know what it is.
That's fun.
And yeah, so that definitely was worth the spend.
expectations versus reality.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think there? Like, when you started this, is it going on the path that you assumed it would go on?
I had never done a startup to this capacity of like where I was a co-founder. It was I've done startup before, but I was already an established team of like, 10 or 20. And I think at that point you really do have a really good product market fit, but we were starting with no product market fit, a lot of still idea generation and what direction we were going to go into. And so I think a myth is that this idea of struggle is a good thing. Struggle can be a good thing depending on how you look at it. But I know right now there's a lot of PR around it's the struggle and it's so great and it teaches you so much. It does. And you are working 100 hours, but you're doing it because you love it. And so it's this weird thing of like, you're loving the struggle, but the struggle is really hard. And sometimes you can't sleep at night. And that is all true. None of that is a myth, but you're also very excited. It's this, it's almost feeling of, I don't have any children, but I can imagine like raising a kid where you're just like, this is mine. Oh my gosh, it's so sweet. I love it so much. And I don't mind waking up every 4 hours to take care of it. It's a same idea, I guess, I think. And so, yeah, we were working long, hard hours, but I think in the end, we were loving what we're doing. So as my dad would say, if you love what you do, you're never working a day in your life.
There you go. So you're 24 months in. What does the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years look like?
Yeah. So we're really excited. When we were focusing in the second year, really on the partnerships and the supplier side, we started to get a little bit more awareness globally once we got those partnerships of who we were and what we were doing. And we had started to become approached by companies potentially with merger and acquisition opportunities. And we were not really ready for that. We weren't looking for that, but it's one of those things where if somebody offers you something so awesome where they say, hey, if you join us, you can double the size of your team. You can CodePilot can continue. You don't have to worry about capital constraints. You're like, oh, that sounds awesome. So we had first entertained a deal out of Australia, another Microsoft partner who had said, we think we could really use your technology. Let's start the conversation. So I think once we all as a team said, okay, we're going to entertain the conversations, then it kind of opened the door of like the possibility. So that deal with that company didn't work out. It just wasn't the right fit. But as we continued on last year in Q4, we started having more conversations with clients and partnerships. And that's when AngelList, actually, we were talking to them about potentially a partnership, had said, oh, we really like what you're doing. Oh, we really like what you're doing. Oh, we could see you guys with us. And it was this moment of, holy cow, this is a perfect fit. This company really focuses on recruiting for software engineers. They have a brand presence, a global brand presence. They're the second largest marketplace behind LinkedIn for companies and talent to kind of exist together and communicate and find the right jobs with the right talent. So we thought, oh, it really aligns with our mission. We really love the team. We should really entertain this idea. So, we've been talking with AngelList over all of Q4 and are really excited to continue the new year with AngelList.
So it sounds like is it acquired? You guys getting funded? Like what's happening specifically?
Yeah. It's, when you think about fundraising for startups too, that's an interesting journey. One that I didn't have very much experience in. So Caleb had worked on that side of the business before where raising funds and he actually worked for a high net worth individual where he was on the other side of the deal funding startups. So I learned a lot from Caleb, I think, on when do you raise? How do you raise? Why do you raise? What does that mean for the business? So after we had raised our seed round, like most startups, like 99% of startups, you start to feel the constraints and you think to yourself, okay, two things. I love what I do. I think what I do is really important. I think what I do is changing the lives for people. How can we keep it going? We either go back to the market to raise funding or we think about this type of M&A deal where our business can continue helping people, but maybe it's under a different brand or maybe it's something else. So we were considering those two avenues last year. And so we were like, putting our pitch deck back together to go back out to the market, to go back to the Bay, to ask for the next round of funding, or this other route. And they're very different routes. and for us, I think we were very, we wanted to find a home where if that meant we do it individually with money or through another brand, we didn't care if CodePilot, the business, existed into an IPO. You know how some people are like, we have to stay with the brand and it's going to be the biggest and the best and we're never going to go under someone else. We didn't care about that. What we cared about was the end user and that our assessments were going to be used. So we decided to go that route with AngelList instead of going back out to the market to raise funding. So we are, we have signed the terms of the deal to be acquired by AngelList.
Which is fantastic. So you guys cared more about the mission and the product than your name.
Yes, and that's tough.
You didn't need your name to be the biggest thing ever.
Yeah.
Which it might even be. I think it's kind of interesting because businesses nowadays. I assume you guys didn't have an office with a big old logo out facing Main Street, right? That's not the way it is anymore. So I do kind of see how. Where it's almost like, hey, this is what we built. The name is part of what you built, but it's probably actually a smaller part than the technology or the customers or the end users of the software. That's pretty exciting. So it's going to live on in a different form or fashion, but it's going to keep going.
CodePilot will live on. The technology of CodePilot will live on with AngelList talent.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations. That's super exciting.
So
then, similar question, but more personally, so what's the next outlook of years look for you? You going on board with AngelList? You gonna go a different direction? Your own, walk me through what that looks like.
Yeah, I think the deal with AngelList was around the technology specifically, and less about the team. And it's interesting because I am a human resource operator 10 years, and when you think about how that goes with a technology team, it doesn't really fit. And so as I thought about what I had been working on the last 2 years around the behavioral sciences piece, around the product piece, the user experience, and user interface side, those are all really fascinating. And I think design thinking, no matter what avenue you take in your career, is always going to be a part of me, kind of data and design, if that's in human resources or if that's in product management. But I decided that I didn't want to go back into product. I want to go back into people. I want to take everything that I've done over the last 2 years on the commercial sides of the business and the marketing side of the business, and I want to be able to turn that into a much more relevant human resources operator. I think I'm going to be able to go back into a business and say, the user groups that I'm supporting and developing, I know exactly the pain points you're going through. I know exactly the challenges you're facing. So when I'm rolling out new projects and initiatives, I'm going to be able to say, okay, let me put that hat back on and see, why doesn't this program work for this group? Well, it's because, they have certain deadlines that they have to be met and they can't do this. So I think it's going to make me a much more efficient HR operator, but people is my heart. It's my bread and butter. It's my soul. It's what I live for. I love developing people and seeing them develop. So I think going back into the human resources side is definitely something that's calling to me, but you never know. I have a couple ideas too that I've been wanting to execute on and get those out the door and start to test those. So maybe another startup it could be in the near future.
Well, you got I have a similar background where I've worked for extremely large companies and very, very small and the medium and everything in between. And I think it gives you a very unique perspective. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you've kind of done that. You've gone kind of a whole different spectrum of different employers and there's different needs of each employees in those companies. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be exciting. Hopefully you come up with a cool idea and rock and roll with that, but you never know.
I have one.
So you have one. Is it shareable yet or not?
No, it's not shareable yet. I think it's a good idea, but when you think it's a good idea versus validating with the market, that's very different.
Oh, completely.
So
I think when somebody has an idea, the first thing to do after you sharpen the idea a little bit is just start, like you said earlier, chatting with people, whether it's a small group of people or a large group, because you don't want to spend 2 years of your life going through that idea and then realizing it was a bad one.
Yes.
Okay, so say if somebody wants to enter the world of HR, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I'd say HR is definitely evolving over the last decade. So when I started my career 10 years ago at a publicly traded company at TravelZoo, HR was very different. There weren't that many tools in terms of automation, in terms of data and intelligence, understanding your user group. But now, fast forward 10 years into the market today, there are so many incredible tools that you can use to understand how your group is thinking, feeling, performance, all of these things that are intelligent tools that can even predict how your workforce is going to adopt a certain program or who's going to churn out. So I think HR has definitely evolved. I think with that, HR has evolved from a very administrative function into a really strategic function. And I think in order to be a high performing HR operator, you have to be able and flexible and willing to change constantly. You can't be someone that is just a process and rule creator because that's not where the needs of the businesses are today. And so I think specifically in technology, you have to be, not only a supportive strategic partner, but you have to be an innovator just like the rest of the business. And I think I've definitely seen that change over the last 10 years. And if you want to be in HR today, you have to be innovating just like, a product team would be.
And I think technology is just ahead of the curve. That's going to roll out to the rest of the businesses too.
Sure.
Right. If you're not adaptable and willing to change, you're probably going to fail in that industry. Okay. So who has been the most important person in your life?
Oh, the most important person in my life.
Yeah. And can you tell me about him or her?
Yeah, so that's a tough question. I'd say I've met some really incredible people along the journey of my entire life, from childhood to now. People that have inspired me, people that have challenged my way of thinking. I guess if you want to talk about longevity, the person that has been there my entire life, who I mentioned earlier, my dad. He is someone that, and my family in general have been incredibly supportive. And definitely have challenged the way that I've thought about things, but overarchingly have been my biggest cheerleader. And I think when you're someone that wants to take risks and you're someone that, you need that. You need a little bit of that foundation and a little bit of that cheerleader, because you yourself inside are thinking, am I making the right decisions? This is a bit, is it a calculated risk? Like, how much am I willing to lose? And so having someone there to support you, if that's emotionally, mentally, even financially sometimes. It's expensive doing a startup. I think we talked a little bit about misconceptions is that you're going to be making money right off the bat. You're not. I'd say prepare yourself for a year of whatever revenues that you're earning to put back into the business, because you want to see it succeed. And so I think, being financially stable as a business, but also personally, it is really an interesting dynamic. And so, my dad in general has been my biggest supporter. And he also, as a entrepreneur, he owns his own business, kind of talks through some of the pitfalls that he's gone through and some of the challenges. And so it's something that I think has definitely brought us closer together.
That's great. When you talk about the financially with the startup, I mean, you could even go backwards in money wise. It could be not even a zero. It could be a negative figure.
Yeah.
Been there before myself.
Yes.
What's one of your favorite memories running this company that you've been a part of?
We had so many wins. I think we really celebrated all of the wins, and we also measured all of the non-wins, all of the things that we totally bombed on. We did a lot of postmortem and say, well, why did that go that way? Why didn't it go well? But we had a great time celebrating. So I remember when we went out to California, we went out to the Bay a few times to meet investors. And it was really exciting to sit with my co-founders and pitch our idea to these investors that had given millions of dollars of capital away. And it was really exciting. And we would leave those meetings like, yes, we did it. Oh my God, you're a rock star. No, you're a rock star. Ah. And like to keep getting those calls back and keep flying out to the Bay. Like there is nothing more exciting than having your idea validated by the market, but investors as well, and seeing your co-founders really come together to be able to communicate that. That was just, there's nothing better, a better feeling than that. And it's also exciting. It's definitely nerve-wracking. It's a time that's high pressure time. It's also really important. So I'd say that was something that we love celebrating. And I think when we got our first signed deals, when we created our contracts and we got them sent back and people were going to pay us, we were like, people are going to pay us. This is working. Holy cow, this is awesome. So, I mean, we really celebrated everything, even to when we hit our milestone of I think it was our first 5,000 software engineers using the tool. We were like, oh my God, we hit 5,000. This is crazy.
Do you think that was more exciting than actual having a successful exit?
Oh man. They're both awesome. Yeah. They're both really great. I think for different reasons. I think when you hit milestones that you set out for yourself, And if you're a goal-oriented person, you're like, yes, I hit this milestone. Like I did it. It's personal satisfaction. It's professional satisfaction. But then when you start to create something outside of yourself for other people, having this exit is going to be awesome because our tool is going to continue to help people. And that feeling, that intrinsic feeling of helping other people, there's nothing greater than that too.
Yeah. So, okay. So I just talked about successful exit. You've been in the business, HR for 10 years, a lot of different things happening. What does success look like for you?
Success for me is a journey, not to be cliche.
I think it's
but
true,
honestly, my definition of success constantly changes and evolves. And maybe that's why I like startups is because they're always changing. But 10 years ago, what I wanted to be like the CEO of a mega $1 million corporation versus now is like very different. And I think my definition of success changes with what my needs and wants are. So going into a new decade, new year, I'm older, I'm wiser, you could say, what my needs are. I've hit a lot of what I need. And so I think when you have what you need, you're kind of like, wow, like I have everything that I need and want and love and people I care about and businesses that are successful. And it's this whole package. And I feel so grateful and so blessed that I've been able to hit a lot of these things. And so success for me moving into the future is continuing to do things I love, continuing to impact people positively, if that's, through a product or if that's through giving time or even mentoring at the Founders Institute, like those types of things is really important for me to feel success. And then, continuing to help people. And if that's in a human resources capacity or if that's helping, people start with that have founders, that have ideas, like just helping people get off the ground to continue to move themselves forward, I think is what's going to be successful for me in the next 10 years.
I love it. So what would you title this chapter in your life?
Oh, wow. The Code Pilot chapter.
Well, there you go.
It's funny. We have a lot of little code names in the business. So I think I would name this chapter Pilot Wings.
I love it.
And my team will know what that means.
So a little different shift here, a little easier questions, perhaps. Has there any books that you've gifted out that you've enjoyed or any books that you've read recently that you would recommend people to read?
Yeah, I am a big reader. I'm a book club, major nerd alert, in my neighborhood. So I'm reading probably a book or two a month these days, and listening to podcasts. Caleb, my co-founder, he actually gifted me last Christmas with the Startup Handbook, which is awesome. It's if you like to absorb content in small chunks, every chapter is kind of a different thought process or from a different serial entrepreneur or someone that's an expert in their craft. And I love looking at that because you don't have to read a full book to absorb the content. And so I like taking snippets. It's why I like podcasts. It's why I like reading, like Forbes or Entrepreneurs Online, quick articles where I can take snippets of information that's maybe practical or helpful, absorb and then move on. So I'm definitely more of a, hey, if I have 30 minutes in the morning, short time read, do that. Not as necessarily someone that's going to read like a full book. But right. Yeah.
So walk me through what's a day in the life look like for you? Like walk me through, like, do you wake up early, late? Like you have 30 minutes podcast type of thing? Like what's a routine?
Yeah. I think routine's really important for a lot of different reasons. And, there's a lot of theories that the earlier you wake up, like the more successful you are. I am going to say it. I'm not that much of a morning person. And that's okay. I think physiologically, that can be true for some people. I'm not someone that gets up at 4:30 or 5, works out, reads, and does all that because I'd be asleep by noon. So that doesn't work for me. I'm usually a riser with the sun. So if that's like between 6:30 or 7:30, I'll definitely do some quick reads. So news highlights, if there's articles that stick out to me, like Harvard Business Review usually has some kind of provocative or interesting thought piece. I'll read it in the morning. I take my dog for a walk. It's usually a 30-minute walk, and I'll do a 30-minute podcast while I walk. So every morning when I walk her, I'm listening to a podcast. Those podcasts can range from, any NPR podcast. We were just talking about this, or any thought-provoking podcast in business or not. It could, it could be even Oprah masterclass. Listening to other people in their journey, I think, is really important. So I do that. And then I'm, off to work or whatever my projects are for that morning. Morning time is usually something I dedicate to project work or work. And then in the afternoon, typically, it's like when I'll schedule meetings or have one-on-ones or whatever I need to do. And then at night, I'm a big yoga So at night, I always try to do yoga. And I think yoga is good for me for a few different reasons. It's a great workout, but also it's a great meditative space. And it's a great space where you have an hour just to think through and untangle some of your thoughts from the day. And so I'm a big believer in practicing whatever it is your fitness routine is. Definitely set time aside for that, for not only physical, but mental awareness and helpfulness. And yeah, that's kind of the consistency of my day.
I like it.
Yeah.
Now that you might have some more time, any chance of getting back into the beach volleyball scene?
Yes. Especially living in Austin. You can play all year round. So I definitely want to get out there soon.
For those that don't know, Cara's got a crazy, wicked serve. It's very difficult to receive. What's an unusual habit or absurd thing that you do often?
I talk to my family a lot, and I think it's unusual because I talk to them every day, but I'm a big believer in talk therapy. And so when you're thinking through problems or challenges, it doesn't necessarily have to be my family in general, but kind of communicating the challenges or the idea also help you think about the problems at the same time. And so I usually every day try to talk to either someone in my family or a close friend of mine and be like, here's how my day was, here's what happened, here's what I'm thinking about this. And they'll usually have a dialogue with me about whatever challenge or problem that I'm thinking through. And I love that. And it's really important for me. And most people would probably say you're talking to your family way too much. That's like, but it's not because I miss them or I love them or this like codependence thing. It's actually because it helps me think through like an issue of the day. And if you talk to somebody you respect, it'd be like, if you have a friend that you respect and their opinion, it's that sort of thing. But
No, it's weird. Common. I think, I don't know. It might be more common. I think I had a little brother call me twice yesterday. He's going through an interview process. I was talking to my brother-in-law probably like 4 times a day there for a while when he was going through the interview process, just, bouncing ideas. I think a safe person to talk to can be very powerful because you can air out your ideas. Yes. Your ideas are different when they're spoken as opposed to just thought in your own head. I also do think that your brain isn't the best storage device for those things. So whether it's writing it down or speaking them out loud, I think it's you hear it differently almost. So I think that's powerful. So if you feel like overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do? Do you have any like questions that help yourself or anything that puts you back on track? Perhaps exercise or anything like that?
Yeah. Self-development, I think this year was really important for me. Understanding who I am, how I think about things, what my skills are, seeking outside help for that. If that's a therapist or if that's a coach, I think is really, really awesome. And that's something I've really taken seriously through this process because you have a lot of doubt and you have a lot of questions and you're going in a lot of different directions. And sometimes it's hard to really focus, like you said. And so I think definitely having those people to talk to, either professional or non, are really helpful. But I think also something that really helps me get organized is planning. I'm a big planner. And I think the power of planning, if that's your schedule or if that's things that you want to tackle or even products that you want to release, like thinking through your sprint cycle. Like we would have Scrum meetings every day. Okay, what's important to deliver? What's not important? We would kind of do red, green, yellow. And so I think if you take some of that philosophy of how product and engineering teams work and you apply that into your daily life, it's actually really beneficial. What do I need to get done? What do I need to stop doing? And what do I need to start doing? And make that realistic, but you can almost do that daily or weekly or monthly, however you want to get that done. And I think especially as a new founder or wanting to come up with an idea, you have to have those milestones of like, I'm going to create the website. I'm going to do the marketing messaging. I'm going to start testing users. Like you have to have those, or in a lot of cases, it just won't happen. And so I think setting those for yourself is really important. And another thing that we use are, what's the methodology that I'm thinking? Where you have these cards where everybody can see and they're working. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Definitely not Gantt because it's the old way. Agile.
It's definitely a form of Agile. If I think about it, I'll tell you.
It's all good.
Yeah. Trello board.
There we go.
Woo! Figured it out. But that's great too, because you can have multiple collaborators on like what's going on, what's not working, what's done. So you can also see things in real time, like getting done, which is awesome.
And do you use that with a software or is that?
Yeah, it's a free one. There's a lot of Trello board free softwares that you can use for yourself or with your team.
What do you like?
I like Trello.com is one, definitely. But I also like Nuclino. It's also like a new note-taking kind of software that's also free. It's just like kind of a like imagine your Google suite of like Google Drive, Google Doc. It's like a beefed up where you can add notes and link to things. So Nuclino and Trello are two of my favorites.
And then you mentioned how you guys in the morning will red, green, yellow.
Yeah.
Is that in the morning first foremost?
Yeah. So you have a Scrum meeting in the morning. Typically, product and engineering teams every morning will say, okay, what do we want to get done today in terms of features or priorities? And then you also want to look at bugs. So what's blocking your users? So in code, constantly things are having to get looked at again, and so. Scrum meetings just help set the priorities of like, a user emailed me and said they can't log in. Crap, this priority 1, let's fix that. Versus new features of like, somebody said they would really like to see this widget in the right corner. Okay, well, how important is that? Did you get other feedback that needs that? So those happen actually usually daily for high performing engineering and product teams. Or weekly, depending on what your schedule is. But yeah, that really helps set the tone of what's high priority and low priority.
And how do you actually rate those? Is that somebody just the boss rates them, or the team votes, or like how does that actually happen?
Yeah, I think this the democracy in startup world, it's definitely there, but you have to move fast and quick, and so you need to have subject matter experts that don't need consensus all the time. I think consensus is great, but it also can be a blocker to a lot of innovation if you're sitting around all the time being like, "What do you guys think? And what do you guys think?" So in this case, I was the scrum manager and the product manager. So I went through the list and I ranked them. And in this example, Dave and Caleb were like, okay, we trust you. Like you've obviously gotten the feedback, what's important. And so they trusted me to do that. And I think there may be like 5 priority levels, and you could also label them depending on what software you're using of like, is it a bug or is it a new feature? Is it an enhancement or all these types of things to help Dave also figure out like when I should do this. And, it's good for Dave too. A lot of those days you couldn't fit all that in an 8-hour work week. And, Dave wouldn't mind like going home and being like, okay, I'll spend a couple hours tonight working on this. So it's great to have co-founders that also are willing to work, equally as hard as you are and love and don't mind doing it.
So when you had new features pitched to you, like a client says, I'd really love to have this.
Yeah.
How do you decide whether to bring that on? Because obviously they're paying you, right?
So in this case, like you have your core out of the box product, and then you could have something what they call like a white label product where you're creating something just for a client. And as a small team, it is a lot of money to create white label products. So you want to try to create an out of the box solution that covers the most ground for the most people that you can. Because if you were just doing all of this consulting work for all of these clients all the time, you would have no time or money to actually build the core product. So that was definitely a balance for us. We wanted to build in new features and new automation and new products that really could hit the masses. That we were also getting feedback from certain clients. Now we would customize, I think, for different clients, but it would really depend on how much and how hard and it would take us to build it and all of those sorts of things.
It's almost a different business. You'd be a consultant then.
Yeah, and when you're a team of less than 10, that's just like not possible.
Yeah.
Unless you wanted consulting to be a side of your business, in which case that's a very different business model than, the product that we had.
It's something that's it is definitely can be a pitfall because could possibly be a large revenue early on, but it's not near a scalable revenue model. So it's definitely something interesting to decide. And it's also, if you have time, if it's easy, it all depends on a lot of different things. But so last question, how would you like to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as somebody that helped other people. And if that's through the businesses that I've done or created or conversations I've had, there are a lot of conversations over the last 10 years where I've sat down with someone and they'd say, hey, I'm scared to have this conversation with my manager, or I'm afraid to talk about my salary, or, how do I get to this next step in my career? And these are pivotal moments for people. To be able to be that sounding board has just been tremendously special for me. So I want to be remembered as somebody that was selfless, that gave their time, dedicated their energy and resources to help other people develop, I guess in any sense.
I love it. Well, Cara, thank you so much for being on the Establishing Your Empire podcast.
Thanks, Daran.
Cheers.
Bye.